1930s, most visitors to the seaside would have arrived by train, though road transport was beginning to compete. Either way, a journey to the coast would have been full of excitement and anticipation. Who would catch that first glimpse of the sea? What better place to start our tour of British seaside resorts than Blackpool? By far the most successful of the British holiday resorts that sprang up in the late 19th century. Blackpool, with its famed Golden Mile leading up to the Tower, was just as big, brash and boisterous in the 1930s as it is today. Bank holidays would see Blackpool's resident population of 100,000 outnumbered by up to 500,000 visitors. A natural focal point for holidaymakers was the Tower, completed in 1894 and actually the highest building in Britain for many years. But most importantly, there was sand, huge amounts of it at low tide, stretching out into the Irish Sea. It was the supposedly healthy attributes of the Irish Sea that drew the first visitors to Blackpool in the 18th century. There was no town as such in the early days, just a few scattered houses, inns and hotels. It wasn't until the coming of the railway in 1846 that the resort developed. The railway made it possible for ordinary folk from the Lancashire mill towns to enjoy a horse-drawn ride along the promenade, with its souvenir shops, theatres, ballrooms, arcades and sideshows. So much so that Blackpool would become Leeds by Sea, or Blackburn by Sea, during each town's annual Wakes Week, when every mill in town closed down. For those not bold enough to venture into the Irish Sea, this open-air pool next to the South Pier offered a gentler alternative, although the water could still be a little cold for some people's liking. In the 50s and 60s, Blackpool had to compete for its holiday trade, not only with other British resorts, but increasingly with foreign package holidays. Nevertheless, despite the rival attractions of sunny Mallorca and the Costa del Sol, the crowds continued to flock to the Lancashire coast. Blackpool's attractions in the late 1960s still included 11 cinemas and 11 theatres, plus the 3 piers, each with its own summer show, and of course the world-renowned pleasure beach at the southern end of the promenade. Amusement arcades and sideshows were as popular as ever, as was a bracing stroll down the North Pier, the oldest of the 3 piers of Blackpool, dating back to 1876. The tower was by now a historic monument, having dominated the Wild Coast for some 60 years. A ride to the top offers breathtaking views and a chance to admire the skills of Victorian engineers, who completed the job in just 2 years and 6 months, with rather less technology than they would have available today. Blackpool trams were still doing good business at a time when all other British tram networks were facing closure. However, many railways were less fortunate. The main central station was to close in 1964, as more and more visitors preferred to arrive by road. Another of Blackpool's long-standing attractions was the Pleasure Beach, first opened in the early years of the 20th century, but by now much expanded and modernised. During the 1960s, the park acquired the world's first commercial monorail, together with other American-inspired rides including the Monster, the Astro Swirl and the Lock Flume. Theatres and cinemas continued to thrive in the 60s, helped along by some big names, including this famous television duo. And of course, Blackpool had its world-famous illuminations, helping to keep the resort jam-packed with visitors well into the autumn season. Like many of Blackpool's attractions, the illuminations already had a long history. They first appeared in 1912, when electricity in Britain was still something of a novelty.